Yes.
Yes, let's go. Okay, so we're going to talk about the Bitcoin Wild West, and I'm going to use my laptop for my notes. Sorry about that. Is that okay? Okay, so why are we calling the Bitcoin a Wild West? I just kind of want to give you my little intro about why that is. What do we mean by that? So we have this new revolutionary technology called Bitcoin, and it empowers individuals. And what do individuals do when they're empowered? They'll do literally anything. So in the Wild West, there's opportunity, there's fortune to be made, there's fame to be claimed, there is certain death in unsustainable environments to be discovered. There's a lot of different things going on. There's a whole big mixed bag. It's a space for new things to be discovered. You have to get a little funky to discover them, and that's what these guys do. So the Wild West is where anything can happen. What do you guys think? Do you agree? What's Bitcoin Wild West? And is that why you're attracted to working in this space? Because it's so wild?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're exactly right. Like, we can do whatever we want, right? But then it's also a scary thing too, because, I mean, yeah, like you mentioned in the Wild West, like there's, death at every corner. And when, creating a startup and trying to run a company, right, there's death at every corner in any industry, right? So, Bitcoin is kind of this, we can do whatever we want, within reason. There's still legal and laws and, in this country, I guess. But, but that, there's opportunity in there as well. Like, just figuring out how, we're, just, I guess as an introduction, I'm Tony from Mutiny Wallet, and we build a self-custodial Lightning wallet. And so, like, there's a lot of flexibility in being in self-custodial where, like, we don't have to abide by, money transmission laws, and we don't have to worry about custodianship laws and things like that. So, like, from my perspective, it's almost like building up defenses properly in this Bitcoin wild west that we're in. Like, sure, like a decade ago, there were unregulated exchanges and Mt. Gox and all these other things that we've like learned from, and things have, happened over the course of the decade. But what's exciting to me is also being able to, run a hopefully sustainable business where we don't die. And yeah, I guess I just focus on not dying.
Survival. We like that. What about you, Keyan?
So the question was,
what's your perspective on the Wild West as Bitcoin?
Yeah, Wild West. So Wild West, so the West isn't currently wild, so it's like not inherently wild. But it was once wild, mostly because it was new. And so Bitcoin is kind of new. But lots of things were once new. Fire was once new. The telegraph was once new. Cryptography was once new. And all of these things, I think, were new and wild. But I think, to the reason why I like building on Bitcoin, and I think other people should too, it is in part because it is new. If you were an early settler of the Wild West and you could deal with the volatility of living there, you could pick gold off of the ground. It was just there. So it's just if you can become comfortable with that and tame that volatility, that wildness, there's potentially opportunity, assuming you're not occupying a plot of land that has no gold on it or something.
Welcome, Topher. We were talking about the Wild West. I guess I just want to ask you directly then, because they've all answered this. Is the fact that Bitcoin is wild and chaotic why you're attracted to it and building in it?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, just the uncertainty and uncharted territory. Yeah, I guess it brings out the pioneer in me.
Absolutely, I love that. Okay, I've got another question for all of you. And we have a ringtone. Just in time. Okay, so yeah, I'll give you a little introduction. We didn't really say. This is Tony from Mutiny. This is Keyan. He works on Stacker News. This is Topher. He works on Bit Escrow. Something I notice about each of you, and something I admire about each of you, is that you have a lot of discernment in a speculative environment. This speculative environment of the Bitcoin space. When there are so many problems to solve, and when there are so many use cases to understand, how do you narrow your focus to what you're building right now?
I think this is the thing that so we're not even a year old into our startup journey, which is, it's just crazy. That's almost coming up on a year. So like the thing I'm focusing on more and more right now is about product building and trying to figure out what is the most valuable thing to build next, and what is the most valuable thing that users want and are willing to pay for. So I don't have the exact answers to that, but what I'm excited to like find that out. Like, you know, like when we started out, like, okay, we know to have a working Bitcoin wallet, like what it needs. From a Lightning perspective, from the Bitcoin perspective, like we know there's lots of good Lightning wallets out there. So we pretty much had that as a gold star, like as like, okay, this is, you know, we have to do these things if we want to build a Lightning wallet in general. And now it's sort of like, okay, we have the Lightning wallet out there. It has some users. How do we get more? How do we create more value for the users that are currently using it? What's missing in their lives, and what do they need Mutiny Wallet to do for them? So, you know, we're kind of just like going down that journey right now ourselves, and trying to like prioritize a few things, and just trying to like, okay, what are the number one concerns that like people have? What's the number one feedback that we just hear from, you know, users of Mutiny Wallet? And so that's just really just one step at a time, like lowest hanging fruit kind of stuff, until we see, you know, if it just like leads us down the right path or not.
Yeah, and so the question was, how do you
narrow your focus when there's a lot of problems?
Yeah, how do you narrow your focus? I think it's kind of easy if you're occupying the right spot. I think of the metaphor I like to think of when I think of company founding is like oil drilling. And so, I mean, I just use the gold metaphor. I just like metaphors, but it's like, it's a problem to strike oil in the sense that you now have a job of building a pump jack and a derrick. But that's really just your job. The hard part was actually finding the oil to begin with, and so I think it's fairly straightforward how to get oil out of the ground, and so that focuses your attention. It's very hard to focus though when you're not standing on oil-rich ground, or you're focused on something other than getting oil out of the ground, like being an oil tycoon instead of actually getting the value or extracting the value for other people to consume.
Okay, so that is a tough question. So I just want to say I admire Keyan because he planted his flag early in the Bitcoin space and decided to stick with what he knows and how to make that work. So that's one way to approach it. Plant your flag early, stick with what you know. I also want to say I admire Tony for starting Mutiny because there's a lot of, even though from the outside it looks like not really much is changing in Bitcoin, on the inside just things are changing all the time. Expectations are changing all the time. So then I admire Tony because he also had to plant his flag in a very a place with a lot of turmoil, which is like, how is the Lightning Network going to shake out? How are we going to actually deliver on the promise of like bringing this non-custodial nature to as many people as possible, or at least trying to pave some trail that people can like find their way to being able to custody their own funds. And so, yeah, Tony's done a lot of just trying to figure that out. And it's not easy. It's a thankless job. And so, yeah, I appreciate both of you for for being trailblazers. Yeah. And it's the same thing with BitEscrow. It's just like, the company first started with Tristan and Super Testnet. Shout out to Super if he's listening. And they started with Lightning Escrow, which is still amazing. Like what Super built for Lightning Escrow is still amazing, and it's still relevant today. But there's a lot of issues with it, and so when I took over as CTO, I decided, we really just have to like go back to the base layer, and try and figure things out. Because even within like the past couple of years that I seriously got into Bitcoin development, so much changed. That a lot of the stuff that was like the old knowledge, it kind of needed to be reevaluated. And so I kind of like being able to go through that process. And Bitcoin allows you to do that. It allows you to basically look at things that other people have built, and you have the opportunity to either build on top of the shoulders of giants or just tear it all down and start anew. But yeah, that's something you have to do. You have to take risks. You have to know how to pivot. So it's exciting, but at the same time, it's like, it's stressful.
That's the trailblazer way. And you're bringing up something I wanted to ask you about, which is just like how often things change when you're working inside this environment. And that's another thing that you guys are all unique in like holding this position of like, you build this thing, you have this focus, but you also have this openness, and you see the other ideas that are being presented. You enjoy I enjoy listening to you talk about them. I don't know anything that's going on, but I feel like I get an education anytime like any of you speak. So I just want to know exactly. I just want to know like, how do you screen the ideas that come up in this space continually? And what do you lean on to tell you what to listen to? Like, is it your expertise? Is it your experience? Is it your need for destruction?
I guess we'll go this way. Well, there is a lot of value in being destructive, because you can start something new that nobody else thought of. But if you're going to build a serious company, like, you have to plant your flag somewhere and start building. And so, yeah, I think the way you just have to be a realist. You can be an optimist. I think we all get into Bitcoin because we're optimists. But at some point, you do have to be a realist. You have to realize that soft forks are hard. You can't really build on top of promises that you don't know will be there within a year or two. Like, Lightning has been waiting for upgrades to the protocol. I mean, they got one with SegWit, with fixing transaction malleability. But then there's all these other things that they still want to see the desired future for Lightning. And they still haven't gotten it. It's just, it's really hard to to plan optimistically for things that you hope that you can get in the future. And at some point, you just have to sit down and try and figure out how you're going to build something practical that has product market fit with the tools you have now. And so I think that's kind of like how you have to look at it.
100% co-sign with that. Like, that would be like, what can you do today? What can users do today is like the most important thing from my perspective. So, there's talks about soft forks all the time, which ones, blah, 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 like protocol enhancements on Lightning that are exciting, that are still 2 years away, always, forever. But it's like, what can we do today to better the user experience, and like to hone in on like the user expectation too? Like, as we start getting more and more people on Bitcoin and Lightning, it's not that expectations change, because they can sometimes. It's more like you're getting different expectations coming in. You're getting Lightning users that were not, that this is their first time with Lightning, there's like, probably in the thousands of people, Bitcoiners that, you can build for, and they're like willing to deal with friction, and they're willing to like try new things. It's like the wild, wild west, right? Like, but then you want to pierce the veil and go further than that and start getting new target audiences and new people that have never experienced any of that. And then you just run into just all the things that are problems. Like we all know a lot of the frictions in Lightning and the pain points, but then you're like, okay, well, yeah, now we pretty much saturated the people that are willing to just deal with the friction. And now it's like, what are we going to do now, right? Because that's, our perspective right now, building self-custodial mobile Lightning wallets, it's very difficult. And so like, how do you go past that and start going to the users that might not know what Lightning is. At the same time, just doing what you can today and not what you can do in maybe 5 to 10 years.
For sure. The question was, what was it again? It was what do you lean on your expertise or experience? And the other thing is like, how do you pick?
How do you screen ideas?
How do you screen ideas given all the things that there are to work on? For me, it's mostly finding several independent points of validation for something. And so like I have ideas about what I want Stacker News to be, but I don't trust them. And stackers have ideas about what Stacker News should be, and I don't trust them. But where they line up, that can be an odd coincidence that is maybe worth pursuing. And it's basically where things overlap, where independent points of validation overlap, including my own point of view, the community's point of view, people I'm talking to, their point of view. And that's the answer to one of the questions. The other one was the expertise or experience. And I think it's really anything. I will depend on literally anything that I can in a moment to get something done, just because you need any 1% of help or smaller is a meaningful assist, because it's just so hard. So if you can make it that much easier.
Yeah, so I think kind of like the cheat code that you're describing is just like staying in conversation continually with a bunch of people who think deeply about these things.
Keyan's cheat code is that he built the ultimate focus group.
Yes, that's the forum where this conversation takes place.
The feedback loop is incredible on Stacker News. You build a platform that you get users' feedback about the platform.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
But I think there's like generic. I think there's something generic there that other people can take and build into their products. Your product should have a mechanism for your users to be able to nag the crap out of you all the time, because that's telling you about the reality of them. Like you really just you're trying to understand the physics of this Wild West that we're in, and like they'll communicate them to you if you give them the ability to.
Speaking of nagging Keyan, his office is just 2 blocks down that way, so feel free to knock on his door.
If anyone comes and visits me, I have hats. I have too many hats. I would like to make some room.
Do you have any cowboy hats for me?
I have cowboy hat stickers now.
Yes, we'll make you a cowboy hat sticker. Pleb Print Shop. That's a shill. I've got 2 more questions for you. Is that cool? Are you good? Okay. Can you talk about a problem that you are currently working out a solution for right now in real time?
Well, I can definitely. I mean, I have 2 that I put in my presentation. So, yeah, one is essentially like having some sort of separate consensus on delivery of messages. So one of the great things about the blockchain is you can post something on there and everybody agrees that it exists. But it takes 10 minutes on average, and it's expensive, and it gets more expensive by the day. So, what is an alternative to that? And so we're looking into using Nostr as a way to sort of have this distributed consensus on message delivery. That solves a lot of problems. Also, it offers reputation, which is, I love all the like cool reputation things you can do with Nostr. There's a lot of cool use cases there. And yeah, so I'll just stick with that. That's like one of the current things that we're working on.
Nostr did need to get mentioned at some point, so I'm glad that you did.
Yeah, I have to be that DJ. Sorry, Nick. You can hate me later.
What am I working on right now? A problem that I'm actively working on right now. I'm trying to make it trivial to contribute to Stacker News' open source project. So that's been like my focus for the last probably week, is really make it dead simple. They don't need to be an expert in nearly anything. One command, you have the whole project running locally, so you can make small modifications to it and submit them for review. Basically, and like more broadly, our focus is to build like somewhat of an autonomous sector to Stacker News in terms of the work that gets done. We already kind of do that on Stacker News itself with the incentives there. we're taking some of our learnings there and we're just now applying that to the area of how do we get work done that the organization needs to get done. So we have like an incentive structure to contributions, and one of the big parts of this is actually making it easy to get started. So someone can start being, the incentives can pay out for them relatively easily.
Yeah, I think easy to get started is what I'm focused on right now. So like, with self-custodial Lightning, hold your own keys, you pay your own fees, you open channels, all those things that nobody wants to actually do. So my focus right now has been on working on Fedimint integrations, which is like federated eCash. At the very least, to just like let people try out Mutiny Wallet with like very little amounts, just to get started with, see if it's a wallet that they like before like fully committing, potentially hundreds of dollars into the wallet, and that's what and then paying the fees for that when they don't even know they might like it at all. So I think like pretty much just getting rid of the friction points for self-custodial Lightning, and then having that Fedimint integration, you can still self-custody your funds once you have enough sats. But I think like, there is sort of a problem with trying to make an end user fully self-sovereign Lightning experience. I know Stacker News is kind of going through some of those efforts and learnings as well. Like it's very difficult to match the UX that people expect. But I think with things like Fedimint and federated eCash, that really helps a lot.
Yeah, I would just say, we have maybe 3 other focuses, but one of the other ones is definitely no longer being a custodian, which is a disaster. So because the alternatives are also not great, and so you end up in these really hard places where you make a bunch of trade-offs, and we're all kind of exploring them now. So.
I just want to bring up a fun fact. Stacker News is, I think, the only place that U.S. customers can get a Lightning address. Like Gary Gensler's not listening in the audience, but
be kind, Gary.
Okay, so we've in our conversation, I've got one more question. In our conversation, we've mentioned a few things that I'm thinking of as like frontiers in this landscape of the Wild West. That's going to be like eCash, you're talking about, Tony, Nostr, open source, Lightning. What do you guys think is the next frontier?
I guess for us, it's going to be smart contracts on Bitcoin, non-custodial escrow. That's kind of where we planted our flag, and that's what we're sticking to.
I think the next frontier is, there's so many frontiers in Bitcoin. It's like, it's a thing and that it's surrounded by frontiers. For us, I'm really interested in using Bitcoin as a tool for things, a tool for like coordination, a tool for more than just a store of value. I think that's one of the things that, one of the unique properties it has over other stores of value in the past. It's like before there wasn't this like friction minimalized, arbitrarily small and transactionally cheap payment method. And I think that there's like a lot that unlocks. And so that's what I think about a lot. But obviously everything that's going on in Nostr is very exciting. Everything that the non-custodial wallets are doing, we have tons of experimentation with eCash and stuff going on. I think it's all pretty awesome.
Yeah, federated eCash, I think. It almost plays into Topher's point as well. Like, there's a lot of programmatic ability that you can do on top of eCash that's really exciting. Things like, we're talking about like being able to have like Lightning address servers based on federated eCash. We're talking about like having a spending account that like the Federation members can like use Nostr Wallet Connect to like, make payments on your behalf, like, some budgeted amount. Like, there's all kinds of you can like lock eCash like specific, like pub keys and spending conditions. Like, there's all these amazing programmability stuff that you can build on top of eCash, and that's like on top. Like, we haven't even dove into that part yet at Muni. We're just like getting very basic Fedimint support in our wallet right now. And then after that, like, you know, hopefully there's a huge explosion in what we can do on top of federated eCash that we just can't do on Bitcoin and Lightning today.
Yeah, I just want to shout out to Justin Moon and Fedimint. Yeah, so they're doing some interesting thing with programmability on Bitcoin too. I also want to give a shout out to BitVM that Robin and Super are working on. That's really cool. They're still kind of trying to make it practical right now, but I see a hope for it in the future to where we'll actually have ways that we can check the execution of actual code using the Bitcoin's consensus. And hopefully we can make that cheap, because right now it's not cheap, but yeah, so there's that too. And then have you heard of like the new name for the soft fork that's being proposed? Was it Inquisition? That's been floated around. That's kind of exciting. They're throwing all the Covenant stuff in there.
Sounds like the name of a ship.
It does.
Pretty good.
It's a whole. It's like a whole. Isn't that like a fork that exists to, like gauge forks? It's like a multi soft fork like repository that Bitcoin changes, like Bitcoin Inquisition. But it's not like an actual, like no one is proposing to actually run that thing.
Well, they as far as I'm aware, they do have an implementation. They have forks Bitcoin Core and they've implemented it.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for your thoughts. I think we're going to close it up. One more shill though. If you want to like learn anything more about Fedimint and eCash, Tony has a great write-up that he did on Stacker News. So check that out.
Woo!